Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm the reviews editor of the Barrister Journal, and I like occasionally when I write an article to produce a YouTube clip of it, and I'm going to do so with the interview I conducted earlier this year, 2017, with Tom Tugendhat MBE MP. Excuse me. Tom is the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on public legal education, PLE, and I've produced an article which is in the current issue of the Barrister, What Next for Public Legal Education? New initiatives which more than scratch the surface of PLE, and it's an interview that I conducted, as I say, prior to the general election. This is the Barrister magazine here, which many of you will have seen, and my article is actually towards the end of the magazine. It's actually the Michaelmas edition, from the 2nd of October, that's beginning of the law term, to the 21st of December 2017. So there's the article there, and it goes over into the page, and there's a picture of Tom Tugendhat there. So let me just tell you about the article itself, for those of you who may not be able to read it, and may want to just see the video. What I've said is the following. I've said ignorance of the law is no excuse. How often is that phrase thrown at people? Frankly, far too often, as readers of the Barrister will probably recall, uncomfortably, from past cases. The problem remains a lack of legal education initiatives, even at the basic level, as we begin the new legal year for 2017 to 18 on the 2nd of October. Things are changing quickly, though, to plug the void of ignorance over the law, and I'm pleased to report that at this stage, because this phrase, public legal education, which is a bit of a tongue twister, is, we think now, more familiar to a much wider group of the public since access to legal aid was cut several years ago by LASPO, and with the emerging digital world and the internet and online courts. And we can say it is thanks, I think, in part to the developing lead work of the all-party parliamentary group on PLE, which is chaired by Tom Tugendhat, and comprising representatives from a wide range of organisations and viewpoints. Obviously, it's all parties, so the political parties are represented. Now, Mr. Tom Tugendhat, who probably many of you don't know, he's an unassuming man to meet. He has a quiet and courteous manner, which belies the very clear mission he has in his life as an MP to serve his constituents and the public, which he does admirably in my view. He comes, of course, from a legal and a political family, which helps. His father was a High Court judge, Sir Michael Tugendhat, and his uncle, a Conservative politician, Christopher Tugendhat, now Baron Tugendhat. And so the strength of his expertise also rests with what he brings to his role. And he's not a lawyer, but he knows what to do. And I think that's very helpful because primarily, actually, a linguist, as I understand it, an expert obviously in terms of military, and a number of other things which we will get onto, because to compound this background, Tom has been a senior army officer, becoming a lieutenant colonel in July 2013 in the Intelligence Corps, of which I have been a member myself. He saw service on operations during the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan, and as the military assistant, the MA, to the Chief of the Defence Staff, the CDS, he's obtained a strong grounding on how the upper echelons of the MOD operate. And I can say that as well because I've run a private office in the MOD, and I've got a very good idea of the fact that you get the information and you know you've got a much better feel for what's happening. And I think that's a marvellous preparation for what he's now doing, because the icing on the cake so far has been his election as chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, which took place on the 12th of July 2017. Because he's only been in Parliament 2 years, because he was elected in 2015 when he began his representation of the safe seat of Tunbridge and Malling in Kent. And he had a majority of over 23,000 votes in 2017. It's known that he was opposed to Brexit prior to the 2016 referendum, although so much of the political landscape has now changed, and I'm actually recording this after the Prime Minister's speech in Florence. So you can see how things have moved forward very quickly. So let's get on to the basic point about law and education. So what has all this got to do then with law and education itself? Quite a lot actually, because Tom co-authored a fascinating policy exchange report on the 8th of October 2013 with Laura Croft. It was called The Fog of Law. Interesting use of words there. An introduction to the legal erosion of British fighting power. So there's a mix of law and the military, and a very good read it is too. It's also topical because there are still big concerns about certain things, such as revisiting the Troubles in Northern Ireland and so forth. So you can see that there are a whole range of issues that are always there in the background, even though the strength of the armed forces seems to be diminishing on a yearly basis. And that's where basically we started with the interview I conducted with him in his office, which is way back in the year just prior to the June election in 2017. The main subject chosen at that time was to be his role as the chair of the APPG on PLE, and the broader concepts of his work, which we drifted towards, as one does when the interviewee opens up as well as he did with me, which was useful because I was able to get a lot more information about what's happening and where we're going. I was interested in the report's proposition. This is the one about the fog of law, where he exposes the spread of law onto the battlefield. Being obviously an ex-soldier myself, this is fascinating because it's come back into the news again. And the Policy Exchange report, which is Policy Exchange being a think tank, political group if you like, but highly influential, it shows how the application of civil norms to military conduct has led to a surge in legal claims against the MOD. A good example perhaps being the need to spread the news about public legal education as widely as possible because of the changes that have taken place with regard to the availability, for instance, of legal aid and legal funding. Now at this stage I'm going to bring in Mr. Dennis Skinner, the Member of Parliament for Bolsover, whom many of you will know. He's got a majority of about 5,000 votes, just over. Now Dennis has always been welcome for his alternative comments and the pithy one-liners he delivers at state openings. "I've never done any cross-party stuff. I can't even contemplate it," he declares. And that, of course, is where the real problem lies. It's not even based on modern party political lines, but appears with respect to Dennis to be the stuff of the past which he represents, anything anti-Tory, Lib Dem, etc. His day is probably done because, unfortunately, we do have other members of Parliament, whose names I will not mention, who have a similar view. But I do think the day is probably done for this attitude, because when it comes to the all-party concepts and the structures of groups like the PLE and the pro bono structure, the Select Committee is voted in by MPs across the spectrum. So the times, basically, they are a-changing for the far left, and I hope they realise that. Now, what is the APPG on PLE all about? It's not all socialists, thankfully, then, that take this view, as membership of this all-party group shows. The group is sponsored by the Legal Action Group, which all of you will know about, and that's the Access to Justice charity, known to all of us for their books, which we rely on, of course, very heavily when we're giving advice and representation in court, and you'll see most of them in the courtroom when you're in there. One of its leading members of the APPG is the courageous crossbencher Colin Lowe, who'll be known to many of you, Lord Lowe of Dalston, who has always been prepared to speak to other parties to further the aims and interests of PLE, with the decline of legal aid for welfare law, which many of us have really felt the brunt of in recent years. Other members, of course, include the redoubtable Steve Hines from LAG, and the group is organised by James Sandbach. An essential of daily life, says Tugendhat, is the ability of people in society to understand what goes on in the complex legal environment we live in. He takes an example of a century ago where something may have gone wrong legally. There would have been limits on what could be done to sort matters out, or to understand what was happening. Times, of course, as I said, have changed. Today, he says, there is a spread of law into almost every aspect of daily life, which means we all should have the basic skills and knowledge to understand how the common law works. So we need to be educated on matters legal. It's as simple as that. Now, the all-party group works closely with the legal pro bono organisations and charities, and I've spoken to them as part and parcel of our work. And it's fair to say that many lawyers, counsel and solicitors undertake substantial pro bono work today, which goes largely unrecognised, but we are moving into a different world today, and we all see it in our practice. And of course Tugendhat and his group, members of which I'm one, see the need for making better use of resources at a time of rising digitisation and the online court. Now I say that because I do think we're not going to see lawyers go. It's not the end of lawyers, as Richard Susskind would suggest, but what we are seeing is a big change. That means people need to know more about their rights and they need to be educated. So let's talk about the Department for Education and their role, because they've been involved in this before and some things have been done. Because towards the end of the interview I asked him about the role of the Department for Education. Now, a previous incumbent there, of course, having become Justice Secretary sometimes thereafter, is known to many of you, Michael Gove. Does the department hold one of the keys to the group's success? The answer to that is naturally obvious: yes. No fudging, no ifs, no buts, to use a phrase, as we enter the world of basic legal literacy. So the work should be beginning in the schools to enable our citizens to have that understanding of law for which we still work as basically a basic requirement. In other words, a most convenient maxim for some of our leaders, because that would then deal with the problem that ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's probably the best of the legal fictions ever created. I say that just to throw that comment in. Now, let's move on from there to the law officers. Just to complete the perspective on PLE, since I did the interview and the general election took place, we've had a major step forward in the summer of 2017 with the announcement by the government's law officers of the creation of a PLE panel chaired by the Solicitor General Robert Buckland, Queen's Counsel MP. Now, Robert declares that the panel is a collection of organisations that aim to promote the importance of teaching the public about the law and their basic civil and criminal rights. And the panel wanted to cover issues such as knowing if you're entitled to a refund in a shop or whether you've been a victim of discrimination. These are common questions we get in the law centres, that I've certainly got in my own law centre, and I get from clients when I see them as private clients. Now, law officers tell us that the PLE panel will provide a platform for both Robert Buckland, that's the Solicitor General, and Jeremy Wright, the Attorney General, to work with organisations in the field, enabling PLE to flourish and to encourage initiatives which improve legal capability. And that's their word. So it's to encourage initiatives which improve legal capability. In other words, that's grand terms for educating people, if I can put it bluntly. Now, this panel will meet biannually, I'm told. Will include representatives from the following. I've talked to some of them. That's the Law Society, Bar Council, Chartered Institute of Legal Executives, Magistrates Association, MOJ, Judicial Office, Solicitors Regulatory Authority, Law for Life, the Bingham Centre for the Rule of Law, Youth Access, Law Centres Federation, and the Citizens Advice Organisations. And there are a number, not just the CABs as they were known. And it can be said, I think, possibly with some confidence after years of false starts, that this is a real start. And I think we should congratulate certainly Robert and Jeremy on doing this. I'm very pleased that this has happened. The trouble is that we've been here before, but possibly this time we might see some action to make better use of resources. And it's worth considering too that nearly 50% of younger people are now attending university. So we are becoming, by definition, a better informed society. And news, of course, of this initiative is brought into our broader concepts as it follows closely on the heels of the discussion by the APPG held during the last Parliament when Tugendhat, before Tugendhat moved on to chairmanship of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. I don't know what the future holds, but obviously at the moment we haven't had a meeting of the all-party group, but there will be others coming up. And I know it's being reorganised for the next parliamentary session. So possibly the last word comes from the law officers themselves rather than Tom, although the sentiments are shared by all, and this is what is being said. Teaching people about their legal rights and responsibilities, together with helping them gain the confidence and skills to get access to justice, can really make a difference to people's lives as well as to our legal system. And I'm sure that is right. Now, don't forget, of course, the role of the Bar Council in all this. I didn't want to miss them out because there's something important on their website and they've produced a lot of information. So we mustn't forget them. Part of the commitment to public legal education, it together with the Citizenship Foundation, who I've been in touch with, have contacted every secondary school in the UK to give them access to what are called classroom resources that explain how judges can help citizens to hold government to account. The resources show how the British Constitution helps to guard against persecution and the arbitrary exercise of power by the state. Now, the Citizenship Foundation, with the support of the Bar Council, have developed resources in the wake of a High Court ruling on the Article 50 application last year, and of course the subsequent attacks which have been made on the judiciary, which I'm not going to comment on. Explaining the role of an independent judiciary in our democratic system is just a part of the Bar Council's work, as well as we all know and appreciate. The question I really have is how many people read the Daily Mail who are of that generation, and I don't think there are that many. However, we do have that role to educate, because what was said on that occasion was not correct. It's as simple as that. Finally, the future for cross-party work. I mentioned earlier certain things. As with other members of the all-party group, I've been proud of the work which we've done so far to raise the PLE profile. A lot of MPs attend the meetings, and it is genuinely a good opportunity to hear what is happening. And it is thanks to the enlightenment, I think, of Tom Tugendhat and his colleagues, and to all the parties represented on that group, that we are actually entering a new era for public legal education now, coming at a time as it does when we see the greatest changes to our legal system since the Judicature Acts. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, as I said at the beginning, and maybe that might just become truth rather than fiction one day. I just hope the view that I don't do this cross-party stuff. It's now stuff of the past for the 21st century. But thanks to the one-liner, Dennis. I hope you enjoy reading the article and also all the other ones in the Barrister, and I'd like to thank Tom Tugendhat and everybody who's helped me put this article together. A big thanks to all of you. Bye-bye.